What you're thinking about seeing may change the way you view abandoned places forever. They say this hospital was closed decades ago, but some things never went away. Are you selling? And worst of all, we're not alone. Watch until the end if you dare before it's too late. Subscribe now, activate the bell and comment. Would you have the courage to enter here? The Call to Terror. Location: St. Lazarus Psychiatric Hospital, an isolated institution in the middle of a dense forest. Rain lashes against the windows. Thunder momentarily illuminates the hospital's dark corridors, revealing elongated shadows and furniture worn by time. Dr. Antunes, a middle-aged psychiatrist, walks through the corridors. His footsteps echo. He carries a blood-stained file. Before him, the door of a special cell. Number 107. He takes a deep breath and opens the door slowly. The camera focuses on the interior of the room. Patient 107 is sitting on a restraint bed. His skin is ashen, his eyes are as black as coal, and a sickly smile stretches across his thin face. Patient 107, a guttural, low voice. "You want to know what I am?" Dr. Antunes recoils, sweating. The corridor behind him becomes completely dark, as if something is sucking the light away. Dr. Antunes, trembling. "This isn't real." Patient 107 tilts his head. The sound of cracking bones fills the room. Patient 107, smiling, whispering, "But now you see me." The hospital shakes. The monitors flicker uncontrollably. A muffled scream echoes through the corridor, and the cell door slams shut. Location: a deserted road leading to St. Lazarus Hospital. The shaky camera shows 4 young people in a car, laughing and talking. Lucas, the leader, holds the camera and records the group. Lucas, excited. "All right, guys, today we're invading one of the most haunted places in the country, St. Lazarus Hospital. They say it was shut down after a mysterious fire, and that whoever goes in never leaves the same." The car stops in front of the immense and decaying hospital. The windows are broken, the structure is covered in moss, and a rusty gate swings in. The wind. Mariana looking through the glass, uneasy. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Henrique, laughing, turning off the car. "If there was real danger, this place would have been demolished by now." The gate creaks slowly, as if opening on ETS own. Everyone looks at it. Julia whispering, "We could still turn back." Lucas opens the car door, too excited. "Give up!" Lucas, smiling at the camera. "And miss the best horror video of our lives? Never." Subtle sign. On the upper floor of the hospital, shadow moves in a broken window. No one notices. The group enters through the rusty gate. The wind blows hard, kicking up dust. Location: the abandoned hospital reception area. The floor is covered with old medical records. Rusty stretchers and overturned wheelchairs create a ghostly scene. There is a strange odor in the air, like mold and rotting meat. Julia's camera captures something in the background. An elevator door opening on its own, but no one notices. Mariana, hugging herself. "Uneasy. It's too cold in here." Enrique, checking the thermometer on his phone. It's saying 68 degrees Fahrenheit. "You're being paranoid." "Oh, it's 20 degrees Celsius." "You're being paranoid if you want to keep the Celsius unit." The group walks through the dark corridors, illuminating the way with flashlights. Julia's camera begins to malfunction, showing interference and quick flashes of something. Creepy detail. In the corner of the screen, for a single second, a face appears in the back of the corridor, smiling. Lucas finds a medical record lying on the floor. He reads it aloud. Lucas reading the paper, laughing nervously. Patient 107. Diagnosis: unknown. Total confinement recommended. The wind blows violently, slamming a door shut. Julia, scared, holding the camera. What was that? The flashlights flicker for a moment. Mariana turns the camera, and for a split second, a pale man appears in the corridor, smiling. When the light returns to normal, he's gone. Mariana gasping. There's someone here. Lucas, trying to laugh nervously. Stop it, Mariana. You're just getting worked up. But the camera continues to malfunction, capturing moving shadows on the walls. Moment of terror. Suddenly, a white, bony hand emerges from the darkness and grabs Enrique by the shoulder. He turns around, but there's no one there. Enrique, swallowing hard, trying to hide his fear. I think we should get out of here. Location: dark corridors of the hospital. The group advances cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The flashlights waver. The air seems denser, charged with electricity. Julia's camera begins to capture static and distort flashes. Mariana gasping, hugging herself. It's too cold in here. It feels like we're in a freezer. Lucas continues recording, trying to maintain control. Lucas forcing a nervous smile. Guys, it's just an old building. The cold must be because the place all is open. Creepy detail. The camera captures a white blur passing very quickly in the background of the corridor. Location: old medical archive. Old records cover the floor, many with names crossed out and stained with dried blood. The file cabinet drawers are open as if someone had desperately searched for something. Mariana picks up one of the records lying on the floor and reads it aloud. Mariana, nervous. Patient 107. Abnormal behavior, no response to any medication. Claims to hear voices. Seems to know when someone is going to... She swallows hard. Her hand trembles. Macabre detail. The last page of the file says he is still here. Suddenly, a muffled sound of footsteps echoes in the corridor. The camera shakes. Everyone looks at the door, but there's one there. Enrique, whispering. I don't think we're alone. Location: hospital corridors. The group leaves the room and faces a long corridor. The only lighting comes from the flashlights. The sound of shuffling footsteps arises as someone is walking right behind them. The camera turns back, but the corridor empty. Julia, whispering, scared. Is someone following us? The sound of the footsteps stops abruptly. Absolute silence. Then a whisper emerges very close to the camera's microphone. Unknown voice, low, distorted. You are already with me. Jump scare. The flashlights go out suddenly. For 2 seconds, everything is completely dark. When the lights come back on, a figure is standing at the end of the corridor, motionless, looking directly at the group. Lucas, shouting, "Run!" The group sprints down the corridor, gasping. The being begins to move in their direction, but without making any noise. The hospital seems to get tighter, as if the walls were closing in. Location: old psychiatric ward. The group locks themselves in a dark room, breathing heavily. The camera continues recording, capturing their panic. Mariana, crying, trembling. This is not a joke. There's something here with us. They look at the door. The sound of scratching begins outside. Something wants to come in. Creepy detail. Julia's camera begins to capture faces in the dark. Suddenly, the door opens on its own. The corridor is completely empty, but something waits in the background. In the dark. Location: abandoned treatment room. Mariana finds an old diary. It belongs to Dr. Antunes. The last entry says patient 107 never died. He became part of the hospital. Now he is the hospital. Mariana stops reading, feeling a chill. Then she notices something terrifying. The camera shows the walls around, covered in hands and faces coming out of the structure as if they were part of the hospital. Turning point, they realize that they are not trapped inside the hospital. The hospital is trapped inside them. The entity manifests completely. A grotesque being made of flesh, shadows, and mixed voices. Patient 107. Multiple voices echoing through the room. Now you are part 2. Major final jump scare. The creature lunges at the camera and the screen cuts to black. Location: main hall of the hospital. Mariana, Lucas, and Julia are still alive. Enrique has disappeared. The hospital now looks different. The corridors have changed place like an end maze. Julia trembling, holding the camera. This place is moving. The sound of footsteps comes from all sides, as if someone or something surrounded them. Julia's camera captures reflections in broken windows, but the reflections do not correspond to the group's movements. Mariana whispering, "The hospital is playing with us." Scare. Lucas looks at Julia, but his reflection in the glass is smiling even though he is serious. Lucas panting, retreating. "Julia, your reflection is not right." Julia looks at the glass and sees reflection blinking at her, but she herself did not blink. She screams and the glass is burst, scattering all around. Shards. Creepy detail. In the middle of the shards fallen the floor, the faces of the group appear, reflected all with black and empty eyes. Location, corridor to the basement. Lucas's radio starts to beep even without a battery. Voice on the radio, distorted, weak. "Help me. I'm her." Mariana and Julia exchange glances. It was Enrique. Mariana, desperate. "We have to find him." Moment of tension. The sound of the radio starts to repeat itself like a loop, faster and sharper, until it turns into a deafening scream. Suddenly the radio turns off. Location, basement entrance, isolation room, the oldest place in the hospital, hidden under the rubble. Walls stained with blood and scratched symbols, as if someone was trying to prevent something getting out of there. The group walks with difficulty as is covered with moldy papers and notebooks. Lucas illuminates an old poster attached to the letters are almost erased. Poster, never talk to him. Never look at him. If he knows your name. It's too late. The camera shakes. A dry noise echoes as if someone was knocking from the other side of the wall. Julia turns the camera to the corner of the room, and Enrique is there with his back to the group, standing motionless. Mariana whispering, relieved. "Enrique, my God, are you okay?" Silence. Enrique doesn't move. Terrifying moment. Lucas takes a step forward. Enrique tilts his head slowly, but to the opposite side of what would be natural. His neck clicks. Julia whispering to Mariana, holding her arm. "That's not Enrique." The camera focuses on Enrique's face. He is smiling, but with his mouth open, too much beyond what a human could do. Location, basement center, patient 107 room. The walls are covered with old photos, all showing the faces of the group as if they had been there for decades. Disturbing detail. One of the photos shows Mariana, but her eyes are already black. Mariana shaking, backing away. This is impossible. Her voice emerges, echoing in all directions. Voice of patient 107, cold, distorted. "You have always been here." Big revelation. The hospital is not just haunted, it is a cycle. It feeds on new visitors, trapping their souls and forcing them to relive the experience forever. The entity finally appears completely. A distorted figure made of faces and hands, in constant mutation. Patient 107, smiling, eyes as black as the void. "Now it's your turn." Last scare. The entity advances to Mariana. The camera falls to the ground and turns. Location, footage found in the hospital. 6 months later, a new exploration team arrives at the hospital, finding the abandoned camera in the basement. They turn on the video and see the last recording of Mariana looking directly at me, smiling, but with completely black eyes. "We are waiting for you." Final text on the screen. The footage was found, but the bodies were never located. Final title. St. Lazarus Hospital remains open, waiting for new visitors. Script. The echoes of the abandoned hospital. The camera opens in an old hospital with peeling walls and empty corridors. The muffled sound of a respirator and the rustling of broken fluorescent lamps are the only noises that echo through the corridors. The doors of some rooms are ajar and strange shadows seem to move. A low, sinister music increases the tension. The title, The Echoes of the Abandoned Hospital, slowly appears on the screen, accompanied by a vibration of sound as if the hospital itself were alive. Lucas, a novice nurse, had always felt something strange about that hospital, but he never imagined that something truly terrifying could happen. He was scheduled for a night shift in the early hours of the morning, the worst part of the day where the hospital seemed darker. During his round, he passed the emergency room, where a newly arrived patient, his face in bandages, was admitted. The doctor who had treated the case said that he had suffered a car accident, but Lucas noticed something strange. The patient, a middle-aged man, was in a state of constant agitation, as if he were having nightmares, shaking during his sleep. The nurse responsible for taking care of him seemed uncomfortable without looking directly at the patient. When Lucas entered the room to change the baby drip, the man, still with his eyes closed, murmured, "I saw what they do with souls here." Before Lucas could ask what he meant, the man seemed to succumb to a deep torpor, and the sound of a normal breath took over the environment. When Lucas left, he noticed a shadow moving strangely in the corridor. He followed the shadow to a forgotten room, and upon opening the door, the corridor flickered. Inside, the walls were covered with frantic drawings, and the smell of rot was unmistakable. An inexplicable presence made him feel a chill down his spine. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. He looked in the mirror and saw, for a brief moment, the figure of a woman with eyes as black as charcoal staring at him. She whispered, "You are not getting out of." Amanda had been a patient in the hospital for days after a complicated surgical procedure. She was recovering in one of the oldest rooms in the hospital, room 9, a location without many patients due to its history of incidents. The other patients always talked about strange things that happened there, but Amanda found it all too bizarre to believe until something started to change with her. Every night she heard heavy footsteps in the corridor, but no one ever showed up. The nurse who attended her was visibly nervous, as if she was running away from something. One night, Amanda woke up with a feeling of extreme cold. Looking into the corridor through her room window, she saw a hooded figure standing in the dark. His eyes glowed in a deep red tone. Terror took over her body, but before she could scream, the figure's hood lifted, revealing a pale, expressionless face and a mouth that seemed to stretch as if preparing to swallow her. The next day, Amanda no longer saw the nurse who took care of her. When she asked about her whereabouts, no one seemed to know anything, as if she had never existed. However, when Amanda went to the bathroom, she saw reflected in the mirror the nurse, but she was crying with dead eyes. "They are coming for you too," she whispered, before disappearing. Mario was one of the most respected surgeons at the hospital, but over the years he began to feel a strange sense of impotence, especially on night shifts. On one of those nights, he was called to attend to the emergency of a patient who had been brought in serious condition, victim of a work accident. He was on bed 13, a number that the oldest in the hospital said was cursed. During the procedure, Mario noticed something peculiar. The patient's eyes were fixed on him despite his unconscious state. When Mario touched the patient, an electric current ran through his hand, making him tremble. At that moment, a low, distorted voice whispered in his ear, "You have already forgotten me, but I remember you." Scared, Mario retreated, but did not dare to tell anyone about what happened. However, when he returned to the hospital the following night, a strange thing happened. The patient from bed 13, who had died in surgery, was back in bed. With his mutilated body and empty expression, he was sitting on the bed staring at Mario. Each night, the patient's body seemed more alive, more animated. He smiled at Mario with a smile that was not human. On one of those nights, Mario decided to investigate and entered the laboratory where the records were. There he found a file about a missing patient who had been treated at the hospital many years before. He soon realized that this patient was from his own past, a medical error that he had committed, leading to the death of that man years ago. When he finally made peace with his guilt, he returned to the room and found bed 13 empty, but when he looked in the patient was behind him, whispering, "You will pay, Mario." Katerina, a young nurse, had only been working at the hospital for 3 months when a new patient was brought in emergency. His name was Dr. Moretti, a renowned surgeon, and the case seemed strange from the beginning. He was very weakened, with a frightening appearance, as if he had aged in a matter of hours. But what disturbed her most was his look, full of fear, as if he knew that something was about to happen. As the days passed, Katerina began to notice increasingly strange behaviors in Dr. Moretti. He talked to himself, asked to be placed in an isolated bed, and said that he felt the presence of something watching him. He mentioned the name of people who never existed, described rooms and corridors that were not in the hospital. On the last night he was hospitalized, Katerina entered the room and found Dr. Moretti standing. His eyes glazed over. He looked at her and said in a distorted voice, "I finally woke up. They came back to get me." He then pointed to the mirror, and in the reflection she saw a dark figure approaching. Before she could scream, Dr. Moretti disappeared, and in his place there was a letter with the following warning: "You cannot escape what I brought back. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any other questions."